everyone, welcome back. There's been a pretty cool new gem added this update. It's a lot better than you think, and not just the stat stick for Jade's busted melee harmony. This is Melee Affliction. It's had a rather quiet introduction to Jade Shadows, but it's actually extremely powerful. Much more powerful than even Melee Duplicate, that legendary Netracel's arcane people keep building for. How strong exactly? Well, take a look at this. Does that look strong to you? Don't worry, I can break all of that down, where it shines best, and why Melee Affliction matters. To be clear, Melee Affliction is not intended to be the next big AoE meta nuke. Rather, where Melee Influences focuses on taking decent melees and turning them into walking AoEs, Melee Affliction instead takes normal melee damage and cranks it up to 11, to make sure anything you hit is really dead. Yes, that thing you saw Harmony do, you can do that in practice on many other melee. Of note, everything I show today is base melee modding times combo heavy or 12 times combo light attacks, and is fully spammable. I'm not relying on any abilities to buff my damage or any Warframe arcanes outside of, in some cases, Arcane Strike for melee attack speed. We still instantly one-shot Xmas units. All damage shown would be massively higher with stuff like Roar, Armor Strip tools, Rivens, Primers, yes, I'm not even priming for Viral, Stealth Multipliers, and so much more. This video is not an end-all be-all for Melee Affliction, but an introduction, as the reach of where it is useful stretches much further than what is obvious. Okay, let's get started. What is Melee Affliction? It's a melee arcane from Jade Shadows that can be equipped on any non-exalted melee in the game. No, you cannot stat stick exalteds with this either. In short, it adds 6 status procs when you meet its activation requirements. In long, upon a melee action that lifts, knocks down, or ragdolls an enemy, this arcane adds 6 status effects originating from that specific attack that procced as extra procs to that specific enemy. There is no cooldown. Notice my careful wording. The melee action itself needs to lift, knockdown, or ragdoll, and it will only add statuses from that specific attack. Lifting or crowd controlling enemies with abilities in advance, like Zephyr Tornadoes, Yareli Sea Snares, Nidus Larva, do not count. Ground finishers do not count. It will also only add extra status originating from that specific melee attack, and does not add pre-existing statuses present, like from a primer. It also only adds the status to the enemy triggered on, not spreading in any kind of AoE. In other words, your melee has to both hit the enemy, deal some kind of crowd control effect, and also proc a status, all in one hit. Seems pretty specific, right? Luckily, there are quite a few tools in the game that can take advantage of this. Now, I will not go into details on Warframes that benefit from this extensively because it's pretty obvious and none of the Warframes are new. Varuna's 1 and Garuda's 4 allow you to get slash procs on knockdowns, lifts, and ragdolls that normally wouldn't slash at all, allowing you to scale 6 extra slash procs into every hit that meets the arcane requirements. Citrine's massive status chance allows light attack melee builds that lack proper slash weight or enough status chance to proc slash often enough on knockdowns, lifts, and ragdolls to properly benefit from Melee Affliction. One other thing, how much does this arcane matter? Well, it's so strong that you build full range. Remember follow through? That pesky melee stat that makes you deal less damage per enemy you hit, and how most melees can only hit about 4 enemies before they fall off a cliff unless using melee influence. Well, Melee Affliction buffs melee damage so high, you can hit all 20 of these enemies at once, and 15 of them will die. Therefore, you don't have to care about follow through on Melee Affliction builds and prioritize max range to delete everything. So, which weapons should we use? The obvious one is Harmony, probably the titular user of this arcane, because its heavy attacks have built-in expedite suffering. Or in other words, it takes all of your slash procs you just dealt and deals it as a single hit and removes these slash procs on heavy. That's how you end up with hundreds of millions of damage. So how strong is it there? Well, you turn 1 slash proc into 1 plus 6 for 7. You're basically adding plus 600% total damage for 7 times scaling. Now, that's stronger than pre-nerf Eclipse, or Vex Armor, or even triple dipping Roar, etc. This thing single-handedly allows a fully built Harmony to hit damage cap with ease. But What about other weapons? I'll be taking a general look at weapon classes today instead of specific weapons, since exceptions to the rule are too many. By looking at weapon classes in general, this means you can take any melee of that archetype and it will shine extremely well with melee affliction. These include one-handed scythes, two-handed Nikanas, blade and whips, fists, and two-handed scythes. Let's take a closer look. Now, one-handed scythes is pretty obvious. Harmony is a one-handed scythe. It's not just good because of the built-in expedite suffering, it's good because one-handed scythes have 4 slash procs on their heavy attack, of which Harmony can expedite very well. This means literally all one-handed scythes in the game will absolutely destroy with melee affliction. For today's example, we will be using Jade Incarnon, which is probably one of the strongest showcases. The reason for this is that Jade Incarnon is not a good poster child for melee influence. It works alright, but the thrown projectiles and innate heat interfere with modding for electric for influence. While it works, it pales in comparison to other melees that take advantage of influence properly due to better innate elements or weighting spread, better gimmicks, or just more accessibility, such as Gunson Prime and literally any dagger compared to, well, picking up an Incarnon weapon. On the other hand, if you're not looking for AoE and just want to crank up Jade's damage as high as possible, Melee Affliction can do exactly that. Being able to mod for pure range also makes up for not using the throwable mini scythe gimmick. Almost all Melee Affliction builds will look the same today for heavy setups. The few light attack setups will have their own variations you'll see later. Jade's template build for any one-handed scythe looks like this. As you can see, we're only building for 2x combo since that's all we need. Range is paramount since we're hitting well into the millions of bleed per swing. It reaches 8.6 meters with spring-loaded blade active. The high range also makes it very easy to build to 100 combo and activate Incarnon mode for more buffs if you so choose, for more raw DPS. Melee Elementalist takes the slot of Killing Blow these days, as status damage is an undiluted stat, but Killing Blow's base damage is already covered by Prime Pressure Point. Bane obviously double dips for 2.4 times more damage. If you're not killing crowds or demolists, you can drop the Bane. We go raw crit since, well, the slash proc is forced. Modding status on force procs is not worth it because Melee Affliction will add 6 slash procs per swing. Basically, look at enemies and heavy attack. That's it. They all die. Spam to your heart's content. Our second category includes two-handed Nikanas. They function similar to one-handed scythes in having force procs on heavy attacks. However, two-handed Nikanas lift enemies instead of knocking them down. They also hit in a circular fashion, letting you even hit enemies behind you. This redeems the garbage stance qualities of two-handed Nikanas by creating a playstyle that does not care about the garbage stance. I go stanceless, because it's easier to build combo that way if needed since the no stance version has much wider hitbox sweeps and is faster. Tenet Livia is the strongest version of two-handed Nikanas, from having way higher innate damage of the progenitor bonus, over 300. The modding is the exact same as the one-handed Scythe build. Once again, we replace Killing Blow with the new Melee Elementalist, as status damage is an undiluted stat while still contributing heavy attack windup. We still go all range, since damage in the millions getting diluted by follow-through still ends up being bleed procs in the hundreds of thousands. Bane is still important if you go into crowd modes for 2.4 times damage and make up for follow-through or killing demolists. If you're just fighting single enemies in a less dense mode, then the Bane can be dropped. We go raw crit since the slash proc is forced, and modding status on force procs is not worth it because Melee Affliction will add 6 slash procs per swing. Again, look at your enemies, use heavy attack, and watch them explode. Our third category includes a very rare and unexpected weapon type, Blade and Whips. Yes, it's super surprising, right? Blade and Whips will be relying on light attacks, so slash weight matters, of which Dorrclave is by far the most disgusting, being 100% slash, but you can use any Blade and Whip with decent slash weight. Note that the move used has very low innate attack speed, so you will want to use all the attack speed you can get to make this more comfortable. The block melee move of Blade and Whips is basically a spin to win, except you can hold down block and auto melee and use it forever without getting carpal tunnel. I can literally spin into this wall and kill things with Volt AFK. This is the only move that exists in the block combo, so it's spammable. Every single one of these hits lifts enemies it touches, which is perfect for Melee Affliction because it can even proc it repeatedly. Dorrclave, being 100% slash, can be built to 12 times combo with Weeping Wounds for 129.6% status, guaranteeing at least 1 slash proc per hit, which will proc Affliction for plus 6 slash procs. Basically, we just made a spammable blender that hits roughly 7 to 8 times harder. Because you don't need to worry about other elements or priming, our slash procs are completely undiluted. We once again go max range, because the damage is literally obscene and even more spammable than the heavy attack build setups. Bane is still important if you go into crowd modes for 2.4 times damage and make up for follow through, or killing dem lists. But if you're fighting just single normal enemies in a less dense mode, then the Bane can be dropped. Since we're building 12 times combo this time, we actually mod Blood Rush and Weeping Moons to get the juicy crit scaling and guarantee 100% plus status. You basically walk up to enemies and spam block auto melee and watch everything die. Okay, our fourth category includes another less popular melee archetype, Fists. The two main ones to note are Tekko Prime and Furax Wraith Incarnon. Now, they absolutely destroy with Afflictions on a 12 times lead attack build. Tekko has much higher slash weight, but this actually isn't too important because most of the procs still come from melee affliction and not the weapon. Fists have one of the best stances in the game, Seismic Palm, of which consists of only 4 hits on neutral E with extremely high modifiers, and more importantly, applies knockdown twice. The combo is also super fast. It activates Affliction once to twice per second as it bulldozes enemies over in a massive hitbox area. Furax Wraith Incarnon is notable for having 5.25 meter range on this build, but the projective waves from the neutral E actually reach 7.25. I have used Amalgam Furax body count here for quality of life if needed on combo duration or if you want to use your pistol, but otherwise, you can drop it for spring-loaded blade to push range up to 9.25. The build is basically identical to the Dorrclave situation, except it feels a lot better to auto-melee the neutral combo than spamming Dorrclave's awkward slow-mo Blanc combo. The impact to slash perk allows converted slash procs to again be converted via Affliction for massive bleed scaling. Attacking enemies for 2 to 3 seconds produces 20 to 30 slash procs with this arcane, versus the typical 3 to 5. At 12 times combo, Weeping Wounds brings us to 81% status, and Blood Rush for 162% crit chance. Bane is still important if you go into crowd modes for 2.4 times damage and make up for follow through or killing dem lists. If you're fighting just single normal enemies in a less dense mode, then the Bane can be dropped. Literally just hold auto melee and watch everything die around you. About Ruvox though? No. Ruvox's Fist Spears do not count as lifted knockdown or ragdoll and will not activate melee affliction on its heavy slam spear gimmick. I'm sorry. Finally, an honorable mention to two-handed Scythes. This relies on the force proc of their heavy attack and decent normal attack spam and decent slash weight. Now, there's only 2 of these in the game. Corfell does not count because the heavy attack is replaced by gunshot, and the gunshot is also so much better than actually swinging the weapon for DPS that you'd never use it for melee affliction. Now, Hespar is the remaining one that works decently well, but there are some caveats. The first slash proc is not on the same hit as the knockdown, like the case of Tenet Livia's Wise Razor. As a result, it can only proc melee affliction on parts of its combo. Nevertheless, somehow, it procs slash pretty much always on the first heavy swing, and the second heavy swing somehow applies melee affliction twice, despite it only having 1 listed hit, and it's probably just not listed correctly. Anyways, while this makes Hespar somewhat functional, I would not recommend using Hespar for this, as it only elevates the weapon to a decent status. If you like the weapon, be my guest. This was my heavy attack build for it. Alright, that wraps up today's video on what you can do with melee afflictions and reviving some otherwise unused weapon archetypes, like fists and blade and whips. Yes, there's probably other archetypes I miss, I can't get them all, as the wiki does not actually list which melee archetypes can proc lifted on heavy attack while also force procking slash, and this video's already long enough. Hopefully this information can be useful to you in upping your melee afflictions builds. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always, as soon as possible like I've been doing with the Jade Shadow update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't miss out on any of that, do you? And that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.